with crowd and cloud, who needs LSPs? I've been working in localization industry from 1993, and perhaps in the past 10 years I noticed that there is something wrong, something not quite right the way we do our business. And in the next 20 minutes I would be criticizing our existing processes, but I've been part of this. I also follow these practices, so don't take this very personally. In order to figure out how we do things, we need to look at the broader picture. We need to take into account the software developers and translators. Here's our software developer. He likes his red hat. He got his great software product, and he's very smart. He would like to sell this software product worldwide. So he meets a language service provider. Language service provider, very happy to meet this software developer. He's happy to offer him his services, but he doesn't do the translation himself. He outsources translation. He outsources translation to the single language service provider. He's also very happy to get the business. He's also very smart. He doesn't do translation. He outsources it. Outsources translation to the in-country agency. In-country agency, very happy, very smart, don't do the translation either. They got certified translator. She's pretty cool. She's got all her certifications. She's invested quite a lot into the tools, into developing her network, and in fact, she's getting so many requests that she may not have time to do the translation. She only proofreads, so she outsources translation to her second cousin, twice removed. He lives out in the country, wears his Ushanka hat, and pretty happy with the amount of business he is getting. And he's also reasonably happy with the amount that he's getting paid for translation. And this amount could be significantly smaller than what the software developer have paid to the language service provider, because there's agency fees on every step. Everybody is trying to get their margin. So there is very little pay for the end translator, and there is also very little motivation, because he's in fact has no responsibility for the translation that he's making. If somebody complains about poor translation, it first hits the language service provider. Another problem with this, what I call localization food chain, is that there is no time to ask questions. If translator have a question, this question have to propagate along the food chain all the way to the software developer. And if there is different time zones, then there may be no time to answer this question either, because in our modern times, the lifetime of the software translation project could be a few days. So not much possibility for communication between the two ends of the chain. Another thing is the improvements of the process and development of localization tools. Who develops localization tools? Mostly men in hats, because they are the ones with the money. They have the money and they have the time to invest into the development and improvement of localization process. But unfortunately, they trying to serve their own interests. So we're trying to improve these workflows, we're trying to squeeze the last amounts of repetitions, but we don't actually solve any problems of developer or translator. What if we take out the middleman and replace it with middleware? In order to figure out what this middleware needs to do, we have to look at the needs of developer and translator. Developer, he likes his code repository. He's got source files, and he would like to get the translated files back into his code repository as easy and as pain-free as possible. He also needs an ordering interface to pay for translations. And translator needs the first translator workbench. This is the tool that should be available to translator for free. It preferably should be web-based, so translate can work from anywhere. It must have the translation memory. It must have the glossary, perhaps the auto-suggestions from machine translation, automation, search and replace, all the good things that are there in the traditional CAD tools, but just web-based. And also translator needs a way to communicate with developer. So the question and answer system, a discussion system. And to be honest, at the moment on the market there are plenty of companies that offer just that middle software. Most offer translators workbench, some offer discussion, some offer API for submitting and retrieving files to the software developer, some project management. Surprisingly, some companies manage to get away without the translation memory. And I guess maybe for the very small, for the short project, it does work. But what concerns me is that none of them offer translation quality. And you may ask me, but traditional language service provider, he offers much more than just the translation. And one thing that he offers is the linguistic research and monitors the translation quality and works out with translators. Who would do all these things if we take out the language service provider and just leave the translator and also the project management part of it? But let's look at the quality. Where do you get most reports of translation issues? Well, it's probably your own localization QA and then end users. And the reports that you get in from the end users, it means that your localization QA in fact missed them. And these end users are enthusiastic enough to support your software by providing this feedback about poor translations. So could we empower these end users to improve your software? Perhaps if they could look at the pre-release software and give their feedback before it hits the rest of the market. And also, localization QA. How much the localization QA is different from the ordinary translators? Can they actually do both? So let's look at the translator as a more complex figure. Not just translator, but also this enthusiastic bilingual user. And also another interested party in this picture is our own regional offices. They are the people who work in the country and who eventually would be selling our localized software. So we gather these people as our private translation crowd. They can communicate with each other and they can upload or download each other translations. They can see each other translations. They can also communicate not only between them, but with developer. Remember that middle part, the localization web app. And also, in our case, what we are translating is the web applications as well. So we can make this translated web application available to the crowd, well, through the cloud. Remember, our localization web app is a cloud application, and what we're translating is also web applications. You would ask why the bilingual users, why the regional office would be motivated by contributing their time and their effort into task of translation. Let's look at the motivating factors. Because we removed the middleman, we can pay our translators a slightly more than market average. And that means that we can afford better translators, and we can retain these translators from project to project. They getting a responsibility for their work, and they getting involved in our project as a continuous basis. If we develop an agile applications, then it's probably iteration after iteration. Regional office, they finally no longer have to blush each time they show the translated localization interface, because they actually contributing to the translation. They are the ones who know best how to speak to the customer and which terms exactly they have to use in the region in order to understand the customer's language. They are our subject matter experts. They know what language is spoken into the region, into the country. And bilingual user, he's working for free, but not. He's getting the involvement in this community. He feels part of the community he contributes to development of the application that he was so enthusiastic to use that previously he contributed with his linguistic feedback, with reports about poor translation. Now he no longer has to complain about poor translation. He can go in and fix it. And he also gets to talk to developers. He is an influence in the development of the product that he's using. That's great. All of them are community members. So we have a fantastic community of translator, regional office, bilingual users working together, cooperating together, and improving the translation quality of the product. How can they do this with our product? You're familiar with proxy translation? Well, it's somewhat like that, but not exactly. How does it work exactly? So this is our cloud translation cloud, and we have our web application. And again, because our software is agile, it means that it can work pretty much from day one. You can launch it, you can quit it, and then gradually we add more features. As we add more features, we submit new source files for translation. They getting added to the amount of work that translators have to do, and the translations for them are stored in translation memory inside Translation Cloud. As with any web application, there is a web client that works in the browser, and then there is a server that we deploy from the code repository. We can deploy this on a regular basis. But between them sits a small proxy application. And that proxy application only does one very simple thing. It passes all requests from the browser client to the server, except requests for the translated files. Translated files are not taken from the server. The files containing translated strings, they are getting from the translation memory. That means that when translator or regional office or enthusiastic user adds new translation, he can see it immediately in context in the localized web application. And if something is in English, well, that means that it's not yet translated. At the time of the release, all we have to do is retrieve translated strings from translation memory, put them into our code repository, and make the final build with the server containing translated files. And the end product doesn't have this proxy anymore. Requests from the browser, from the web client in the browser, go directly to the server and retrieving translated files from the server. So we can, once the product is released, the translated strings are burned into the web application. At the same time, back on the translation cloud, we can start working on the next version of our product, and this whole process starts all over again. It gives ability to immediately review application, it gives much better translation quality, it gives more involvement for translators, and it makes developer happy. Yes, developer have to contribute some of his time in order to manage translations, in order to answer the translator's questions, but now he is also getting responsibility for creating translated product. Translation is no longer something that we put to the side, it's actually part of our entire development process. Well, thank you very much, and if you want to learn more, you can contact me, Stanislav Kamyanov at Schneider Electric, or you can contact Jerry Hergord at Get Localization, the company which is actually providing this localization platform for us. Thank you.